Most e-commerce brands fail to understand how scaling truly works when it comes to Google Ads. They often imagine a path where it's almost like a linear line going all the way to the moon, or one where there's more ups than downs. But what if I actually told you that that's really not how scaling works with Google? You see, scaling is more like an art which gets mastered over time when it comes to Google Ads. It's not like you would face with Facebook ads or TikTok ads where you launch an ad tonight and by tomorrow night you know if things are gonna work or they're not going to work. And oftentimes, the better and easier your approach is with Google Ads, the easier the scaling process is as well. So many brand owners think that scaling is all about these complex campaigns, all these complex strategies with these nitty-gritty details. That's far from the truth. But before I discuss about how scaling actually works, we're gonna go over 3 different examples, all brands I'm working with under my Google Ads agency, Your Marketing, all of which we are scaling, and I'm gonna show you exactly how scaling worked for these 3 brands right here. One of these brands is a $100 million brand. But going over the first brand right here, this is a brand which we actually recently started working with about a month ago, and what you want to see is with this brand, they actually had started to run Google Ads in October of 2023. So it's been a little over a year since they have been running ads on Google. During the time of November and December, because it's Q4, they did find some great success scaling. However, if you look, after December, things kind of plummeted for the next 2 months. There was no kind of real traction, although it seems like they were making a lot of money. Conversion tracking was up and they were actually making half of what it says right here. So for the next 2 months, they were basically at the break-even levels with Google Ads after having a great month with Google. And scaling kind of can be illustrated in this first manner, where you will find it where your brand does extremely well for a certain amount of time, maybe during Q4 or maybe during the other times where maybe it's peak season for your brand. But right after, scaling diminishes. It's more about keeping things stable, about keeping things going. Now, for this brand, this was a little bit of a weird drop because there's no seasonality for this brand. It does well regardless of the month that we are in. So this was more because of the strategy. This was more because of a dying approach when it came to the Google Ad time. But the moment they changed it up, you can see the scaling factor came back in until, of course, that strategy started to die off as well. And that's when we kind of began work and started scaling this, where now it's in the scaling phase. It has done much, much better. And these November and December months are going to be 10x better than what they were last year, simply because by this point, the algorithm has mastered the scaling process. It has 1 year's worth of data, $733,000 in total ad spend, and roughly 8,000 in conversion data to go off of. So this is what I mean when I say scaling is mastered over time. Initially, you'll find that although there's some great scale, some great momentum, it's not stable enough. It doesn't provide consistency, and this has nothing to do with the actual approach you have. This has nothing to do with the products you sell. It's more because your account, your brand, has not had enough time in the market. The algorithm has not understood exactly how scaling should work. Same thing with the second brand right here. Also a non-seasonal brand, also one we started working with actually from the beginning in September of 2023, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year and you want to scale to the next level with Google Ads and you need some help, go to my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a free call with me, and let's see if we can potentially work together and make that happen. But first month, September, it was great. Second month, third month, also pretty good. But as you see right here, the things were starting to scale up and they were going up and down during this time. But instead of scaling, it was more about keeping the momentum going, keeping things steady for the first half of the year, because this brand just doesn't perform as well during the first half of the year. However, because the strategy was accurate and because the approach was very simple, because we started to work from the beginning here, what happened was instead of the results going down like with the first brand where we weren't working, they actually were able to keep things steady and keep things going until we got to the best season, which was June, July, August. And after that, now that we're entering Q4, things will also start to go up again one more time once we are further establishing the scaling phase. But scale can be either very erratic, up and down like the first brand, or it can be a little bit up, then stability or just plateauing for a couple of months because of whatever reason. And then from there, it can, again, because there's enough time in the market, the algorithm has had enough time with even the plateau to understand what the right audience is, who the right person who purchased from the brand is, etc. That's when you can further introduce more scale and get things going. And the third brand, which is the $100 million brand right here, has actually been running ads since about 2007, 2008. However, the plateau stage for this brand, it wasn't a couple of months, it was actually a couple of years. From 2007 basically all the way up to 2018, which is over 11 years, the brand really was in a plateau stage. Although they were getting some decent results, it was nothing close enough to where it justified making any big steps, making any big moves here. However, come 2018, 2019, 2020, that's when the brand really started to pick up and scale. And if you look right here, there was a drastic change in the total revenue that was getting done. And this is because, again, it had over 10 to 15 years in the market. You might look at this and say, this level of scale is insane, going from 200,000, half a million to almost 4 times that revenue in a matter of a couple of months is insane. However, what you need to understand is before that, for 10 to 15 years, the algorithm was capturing data. It has $6.5 million in terms of ad spend, 308,000 conversions. And in total, if we look at the revenue, it's about 100 million just from Google as alone. So that's why I always say time in the market beats everything else. The more you let the algorithm run, the more scale is going to be introduced. And even then, when scale was getting introduced, there were still months where, because this brand is not seasonal, it should have been pretty steady. However, there were months when there was a lot of ups and downs. They would get some good level of scale, then things would plateau. And then again, there would be more level of scale, more level of spending in terms of ad spend as competition increased, etc. But it's going to be a mixture between plateaus and a mixture between scaling up if you do it properly. Because if you don't do it the right way, if your approach is too complex like it was with the first brand before we began working, then that's the only situation where things will actually go down on a more consistent basis. Because keep in mind, Google Ads is just a robot that responds to your input. The easier your inputs are and the easier the life of the algorithm you make, the more your brand is going to be scaled. Ultimately, at this point of time, the algorithm wants the best possible brand winning those auctions. You have to always keep this in mind, and the best brands will be the ones that scale the most and with the most positive results. When I say the best, I'm simply referring to brands which, number one, provide the best quality service for the customer. Number two, have a high perceived value add. It's not about what the real value of your product is, it's more about what it's perceived through the images you see on Google Shopping, or through the words you use within Google Search, or through the videos on YouTube. When you combine this with proper retargeting strategies versus cold traffic strategies, you're applying the 80-20 rule where 80% of your budget goes towards cold prospecting, 20% towards retargeting. That's when you create this whole Google Ads ecosystem, which makes scale like this possible. But again, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year, you need some extra help scaling with Google Ads to the next level, go on my website, yourmarketing.com, and schedule a free call with me, and let's see if we can potentially work together and make that happen. But check out this video right here on the top 5 performance max campaign tips and tricks, which you should be implementing right now to scale with PMax to the next level.